This is a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Now, tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to Jesus. And the Pharisees and scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." Then he told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me." And he divided his property between them. Now many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in great need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I have served you, and I never once disobeyed your commands. Yet you never gave me even a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, the one who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But it was fitting to celebrate and be glad and rejoice. For this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found.'" The gospel tells us that tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to Jesus. But the Pharisees and the scribes began to complain, say, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." They were drawing near to Jesus because they sensed the mercy and the forgiveness of God that radiated forth from him. And he not only welcomes sinners, but he sits down to share a meal together. Jesus welcomes the one who sins. This does not mean that Jesus condones sin, but rather he comes to us in our human frailty and weakness, and he calls us to himself, that we might be free of our sin. And when we respond, when we draw near to listen to Jesus, he welcomes us to be in loving relationship with him, to share a meal with him, to share in the intimacy of his love. The characteristic so present in this beautiful parable of the prodigal son is the great rejoicing of the Father when his son returns. There's no punishment or reprimand, but rather there is rejoicing. In the closing lines of the parable of the prodigal son, we see that the father pleads with his older son. The older son who does not want his father to forgive the younger son. And the father says to him, "We must celebrate and rejoice because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." That is what God does when we turn to God in our weakness and seek God's forgiveness. God rejoices. And we are asked to believe and to trust in the love, the mercy, and the unending forgiveness of our God. In the parable, the father was waiting every day to see if his son would return. And when he saw him in the distance, he ran to greet him, and he embraced him, because the son knew that he was lost, and he so desired now to come home again. That is really all that God asks of us, the desire to return home into the loving embrace of God. It is important for all of us to acknowledge that as human beings, we do sin. And all of us are in need of God's mercy. And then we must believe that God rejoices when we turn to God to receive His mercy and His love. Why does God rejoice? Because God is our Father. And God's greatest desire is to see all of us, all of God's children, safely home again. To know this is to begin to understand who we really are. We are beloved children of God. And God so greatly desires to be with His children, both now and forever. And knowing this is cause for great, great rejoicing in the heavens and here upon the earth. And in heaven, no one rejoices more than our Blessed Mother. Her greatest desire as our mother is also that all her children find their way home, that all her children return to the embrace of the Heavenly Father. She tells us that this is precisely why her Son, Jesus, came to this earth, to bring us all back to the embrace of our God, who is Father of us all. In the parable of the prodigal son, the older son is very angry, and he does not want his father to forgive the younger son. And he says to him, "All these years I have served you, and all these years I have never once disobeyed your command. Yet you never even gave me a young goat to feast on with my friends." The older son is right. He did serve the father for many years. And he did obey all his commands. All of that is true. But the older son never loved the father. He served him, he obeyed him, but he did not love him. If he had loved the father, he would have known that everything the father had was also his. If he had loved the father's love would have found a home within the older son's heart, and he would not have remained outside the house, unwilling to enter, unwilling to forgive. But he would have embraced his brother and welcomed him back into the family home. Our mother asks us to accept the love of the Father and to love the Father in return. She asks us to love God our Father with everything that is in us. For only then will we come to know the truth of who we really are. And that is royal children of God, forgiven, redeemed, lovingly embraced by God, and called to live this life on earth, not in dutiful service alone, but in the dignity of the divine love of God that comes to us in Jesus Christ. Mary, our mother, will help us all to do this, for it is the way she lived her life on this earth. Her desire is that we do the same. And so she is always with us, always helping us by gently leading us back to the embrace of the Father, helping us all to love and embrace one another. She is our mother, who is helping us all to enter the house of the Father. She's our Mother Mary, our beautiful and loving Mother Mary, our mother who is and who always will be our mother of perpetual help.